You can't prepare yourself for how you're going to feel when over time that money turns into more money and turns into more money, and you're looking at a large figure and that starts to go down.
Today's episode is a little bit different. We're joined by one of the Making Money audience, Amy. Many of us have had mistakes in our investing journey, but not everyone is brave enough to come and tell us about them.
And I fell for it hook, line and sinker.
I mean, yeah.
Big red flag.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. Oh, God.
I want to start at the beginning, before the story that you're about to tell us, and just ask kind of, what was your relationship like when you were growing up with money?
So my relationship with money when I was growing up was sort of, fairly non-existent really. I come from a working class background. Dad was a teacher, mum was a nurse. We didn't have a lot of money, but we did have a lot of fun. I don't really recall having sort of an understood relationship with money other than being given 50 pence a week pocket money and putting that in my piggy bank and keeping hold of it as tightly as possible. As I sort of grew up, my parents made some good decisions as they got older, and I remember them paying their mortgage off quite early, and I remember that being like a big thing. You know, there was like celebration. There was some sparkling wine. It was like, woohoo, we've paid our mortgage off. And I didn't understand what a mortgage was, but I definitely, the seeds were being sowed at that stage, and that sort of made me sort of think like, paying off debt early is a good thing, you know. So I was already starting to get some valuable lessons from my parenting, but certainly don't come from any sort of wealth. I mean, my parents today will be the type of people that would say, you kids don't know you were born 5% mortgage rates. We paid 19% in 1991 or whatever. And so, you know, working class family, things were tough. I got a little bit of pocket money every week. And to me, especially when I was older, investing was maybe something that like rich people did, and the stock market was something that I saw in movies. I had a post office account, and I think my nan put £10 in, and that was that really.
How much do you think that early experience around money fed into the situation that arose when you were older? Yeah,
so there's definitely like a scarcity mentality that was possibly sort of put into me from how I grew up. In a family of, you know, working class, 3 kids to feed, that definitely made me, and still today affects me. You know, I'm quite a frugal person actually. I'm quite generous, I'd like to think, but I'm not very good at spending money on myself. I still today sort of probably try and hold on to money a bit tighter than I probably should, or worry if I have to spend more than £2.50.
Well, you've got a good job, right?
Yeah. So I do have a good job. And sort of as I grew up, I left school and didn't go to further education. I did an apprenticeship when I left school, an engineering apprenticeship. So fast forward to sort of early 20s, I'd finished my apprenticeship as a junior engineer for quite a good tech firm. All my friends were in uni laden with debt, with limited job prospects as they were leaving, and I was doing quite well for myself and had a couple of quid in the bank.
Is that when you started investing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had some spare cash. I think I was probably putting a couple of quid in the bank or my post office savings account or whatever. Bought some premium bonds, which I still have today, that are worth exactly the same as what I bought them for in, I think, 2002.
You never won anything?
No, not a penny. Not a penny.
Just letting people listen to that.
Bought 100 quid's worth back then, which would have been a lot of money for me to fork out. But I considered it as safe, you know. And I dug out the certificate the other day and had to look online with my numbers, and no, not a penny. So I thought that I would put some money into a post office savings account and into the bank, and can't remember what interest rates were at the time, but I definitely was mindful that I needed to start saving for my future. And my parents were giving me good lessons about, you know, you should think about maybe buying a house, or, you know, if you're doing well for yourself, you should definitely not spend it all in the pub. So fast forward a couple more years, and I went on holiday with some friends, and that was before the smartphones were a thing and doom scrolling. So I was in a hotel, and there was like a book amnesty, and I was having a look through the books and to try and find something to read on my Sun Lounger. And I came across a book, and I honestly think that it's probably the only book I could find that was in the English language. I think every other book in the book amnesty was German. So I went for this book. And it was called The Money Chef or The Wealth Chef or something. And I thought, I had to look at the back and I was like, I sort of might be quite interested in this. And thought that I'd probably just read a couple of chapters and put it back in the shelf. But I took it to my sunbed and I absolutely lapped it up. I still remember now how I felt when I read that book, even 2 chapters into the book, maybe not 2, but a few. And I remember saying to my friends that I was on holiday with, girls, we're going to be millionaires. Because, spoiler alert, the book's about compound interest, right? And I read the book and I remember thinking, like, my brain just went into overactivity about the whole subject. And I remember thinking, like, why don't I know about this already, for a start? Why is no one else talking about this? Like, what am I going to do with this information? How do I start? And brilliant, I'm going to be a millionaire. And all my friends are going to be millionaires because I'm going to tell them all about it. And I'm going to go home and tell all my family about it. And it's the next best thing. So that then led me to open up, pure luck more than judgment. I opened up an account with Fidelity and started paying into like an ETF. It was a UK, I think I only paid into one. And as I recall, initially it was just like, I was still investing in a savings account as well, because that felt really safe. But into the fund, I was putting in I think initially it was like 25 quid a month, and then I upped it to 50 quid a month, and then maybe up to like 100 quid a month. And I just left. I did all the right things. I just left it for like 15 years. I started in 2005, and I was cycling in for all of that time until I got to a point in early 2020 where my balance was looking pretty nice. It was almost at the sort of £50,000 mark. I've been putting in extra over the years as well, get a bonus in work or pay rise or whatever. I was putting a bit extra in here and there. So yeah, I got it up to nearly £50,000 and was obviously, delighted with its progress. And yeah, this should be the end of a really lovely story, and I should be sat here on millions of pounds today, shouldn't I?
You did the right things, but but the market was on your side at the time. And I think one of the hardest things, like from reading your story, is that I often say, take the thick with the thin, especially the thin. If it drops, don't worry about it. But actually, when that happens, it's a different experience, isn't it, psychologically? And that's probably what happened to you, right?
Yeah, 100%. You can't prepare yourself for how you're going to feel when over time that money turns into more money and turns into more money, and the effects of compounding start to really hit that snowball effect, and the money gets more and more and more, and you're looking at a large figure on a piece of paper or on an app, and that starts to go down. I've read so many books on the psychology of investing now as well. I've really tried to re-educate myself in recent years, and I'd like to think that I understand it well, but I don't think it matters how. Had I have read all of those books before, I'd have still made similar mistakes, I think.
How did it make you feel when the money went down though? Because when it's going up, obviously you're like, I'm on top of the world. I'm a genius. I'm so smart. You go back to your book and you're like,
this is the thing.
This is my Bible.
Think I was a genius. Yeah. I'd read this book. I'd made all these great changes and started to invest my money. I was telling everyone else about it and no one really wanted to listen, if I'm totally honest. They were like, well, my money's actually in a good savings account or whatever. You can't force people to do it, can you? And so I did there's a little bit of smugness about it, I suppose. I was like, I'm going to be retiring early. And so I did think that I was like the next Warren Buffett, if I'm totally honest with you. And then COVID hit.
And so there was a quick drop in COVID. And you said that the portfolio balance was just dropping on the daily, was it?
Yeah. So I remember it like it was yesterday. And I remember, on your online account or on your app, it's if you're in a positive balance, it's green. Yeah. If you're negative, it's red. Yeah. Okay. So it was green. It was very green. And I remember when COVID hit thinking, oh shit, I better check my Fidelity account. Because I still kept a couple of quid in a savings account as well. I had some money elsewhere. I thought, better check that Fidelity account. And it had gone down by about, 10% at that point. And then I remember as the days ticked on, the lockdown started to be invoked. Boris Johnson and his crew were standing up every day talking to the nation. It was just going 6%, 5%, 3%, 10% one day, 6%. And it was ticking down and down and down and down and down. And I remember getting to the point where I saw that another couple of bad days and it was going to tick under zero. And that green figure was going to turn into a red figure. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I could not let that happen. Psychologically killed me. So I sold.
What happened next? Because I know that recovery, like how quick it was. The quickest bounce
Elastic
back
bands.
in.
How did that make you feel?
Awful. So it's like the 7 stages of acceptance, of any sort of major, I hate to call it a trauma, but
no, it's traumatic, and I don't not, because money is a big part of our lives. If someone robs like 10 grand out your bank account, that's a traumatic experience. And feeling that you're losing money and then doing the right thing and then realizing you've done the wrong thing, there's a lot of guilt and shame in that. And
don't forget that the environment that I was living in at the time, it was unprecedented, wasn't it? We were all locked down. We were separate from our family and friends. I was alone. Yeah. I had other sort of personal things going on, and so it was. I had all of the feelings and all of the emotions, and it consumed me. It consumed my mind for days and weeks that I thought I was brilliant. Firstly, I thought I was a brilliant investor. Secondly, I thought I was an even better investor because I protected that initial capital that I'd been feeding into the fund over the however many years, and all of the relief that came with that. And then seeing it rebound and thinking, oh, God, what have I done? And having this money now sat in my bank account that's paying like 0.25% at the time, was it? You wouldn't have even got that in a standard savings account. Interest rates being at an all-time low. And I was just helpless. I didn't know what to do. And I was annoyed with myself. I was embarrassed. I felt stupid. I didn't know what to do. It was rough.
Have you taken a step back and thought, like, even if you relied on your book, if there was no COVID, do you think you still would have made the same decisions? Because obviously in the book, there was no lockdown past it. No one had ever seen it. It was unprecedented. So do you think if it wasn't for COVID and you living alone, you still would have made the same decision just because you didn't want to see it going down?
I mean, it's tricky, isn't it, to say what you would have done in a different scenario. I think that the aggressiveness of that initial crash that week in March was pretty scary.
And the global lockdown felt like different, right? I think people always say about crashes, everyone thinks this time is different. It never is. But every crash is kind of different, in a sense of the factors. Is it nuclear missile threats or is it a global pandemic? And I think everyone thinks, oh crap, we're not coming back from this.
Yeah. And also, is it a crash or is it just a correction? Mm-hmm. That was a crash, right? Mm-hmm. It was going down by multiples of percent every single day. Boom, boom, boom. And so it's really hard to actually look back and think, well, I've made the same decisions. But I'll be honest, I'm sort of back here now in present day. I'm glad that I did make those decisions and everything that did happen to me because actually I've come out the other side of it a better investor.
I think you would have made that decision at some point and it would have been even more disastrous if you had more money, right? And if the markets the problem with a good market is it flatters people. And then when the crash comes, they always come, it happens. People forget, you might feel like you're the only person that did this, but the markets were dropping because people were selling.
Yeah.
They're a function of buyers and sellers. So the market crashing at that rate is people dumping. So for every one of you that's brave enough to sit here and admit to it, there's millions of other people that did the exact same thing, right?
Yeah.
So I remember that time personally. For me, I was going to buy a buy-to-let property and I'd been through the mill a few times, made my own similar mistakes, and I cancelled the purchase of that property and I bought in every day. So the same set of scenarios of not to rub salt in the wound, but it just shows perspective on a situation. I saw it as only a good thing. And I was in this group of my mates who were working banks and stuff. And they were just like, I need a loan. Can anyone lend me any money?
Yeah.
They're borrowing money off their mom and throwing it in. Whereas on the other side, it was millions of sellers who were just dumping because they hadn't had that kind of experience. I think you kind of have to go through it once.
It's a really interesting perspective. And you saying that just gives me so much more enthusiasm that if this was to ever happen again, which it will, there'll be another crash at some point, right? I will be...
Yeah. Oh yeah. You
the way that you...
I want to talk about community and support in a second, but I'll give you my number at the end of this. And next time there's a crash comes, you message me and I'll tell you. And we'll all just leap in head first. And then before we know it, that time will be different.
That'll be the big one.
What I want to talk about this because you said you were alone. It was COVID. You were like mentally in a bad place. Thank you. This tablet hates me. It just continues to shut down constantly. You were in this bad place. And what that led you to do was seek out community almost, a place to go. Can you just run us through what happened after this?
So obviously I was sat with this. I still, although I've sold, not a loss, but not much of a gain either, it was still a fair whack of money that I had sat burning a hole in my bank account that wasn't paying me very much money. And so I now know that what I did after that was chase my losses, right? I didn't want it sat in the bank.
On-paper gains that you didn't have anymore because you hadn't lost any money.
No, exactly.
No. You detached yourself to the game.
Yeah. But from a psychological point of view, I'd lost the money on paper. Yeah. So, and that was years of investing. And so I was very, very keen to invest that money somewhere else. And that was the first challenge that led me to make some of the decisions that I made.
Are you building a SaaS or venture-backed business, or just trying to grow abroad? Well, if potential customers or investors haven't asked already about ISO 27001, SOC 2, or GDPR compliance, they probably will soon. Achieving compliance can unlock major growth for your company, but the process is often, intensive and costly. This is where our partner Vanta comes in. Vanta automates up to 90% of compliance work, getting you audit ready in weeks instead of months, and saving you significant costs. Also, Vanta scales with your business, helping you successfully enter new markets and land bigger deals. They already have over 7,000 customers, including big names like Cora and Flow Health. As a special offer, Making Money listeners can get $1,000 off Vanta by going to vanta.com/makingmoney. There's a link in the description for you.
So, of course, we're all at home. We can't go anywhere. We've got our smartphones in our hands. I'm interested in finance. I get on YouTube. I get on Instagram. I get on Facebook. I get on Twitter. You start to have a look at these different videos and different communities and see what these people are saying about that crash and these people are saying about the next crash and the new crash and the crash about the new crash and bull markets and all that stuff. Most of it clickbait. And I came across a couple of people online that was sort of actively offering advice to people that had encountered something similar to myself. I actually found a video specifically about it. Oh, did you get worried in the COVID crash and sell all of your investment portfolio? And, we'll help you realign that money and make a huge amount of money in the short term to try and claw back some of those unrealized.
Was it as direct as that, do you think, the messaging? You felt that it was
I think it was very
it's almost
targeted.
like an offer page, are you a single mother in this kind of, it feels like a promotional sales page. So it was that targeted.
Yeah, I think it was really targeted. And I fell for it hook, line and sinker. Some of the people online had, very polished production.
You can say the names of the people, the creators.
So the main creator that I followed during this time and the one that I took the most advice from was called Meet Kevin.
Uh-huh.
How I first came across him, I don't really know.
Everywhere.
It's the algorithm gets
he was
you. I think if you
millions of views.
If you were to Google anything or search for anything on YouTube, I think you would somehow at some point end up with his channel as a recommendation. And also a lot of the content that he produced actually seemed like it was really well thought out and really well sort of investigated. He does a lot on like politics as well. It's not all just financial stuff, anything that will affect the markets really. And so I watched his channel for a while and I had a little look at some of the, he would advertise his own portfolio and the stocks that he was investing in that week. and lots of screenshots of like, you know, lots of gains.
Tendies, as he called them at the time.
Tendies, yeah. Oh God.
What's a tendy?
That's what he was. I remember this period. He blew up because he covered stimulus checks daily, and he got like insane. He was getting 1 million views a day more. I remember him bragging about the fact he was earning multiple 7 figures a month, and he became almost like a meme as well. Like Buy the Dip, he had this little song,
yeah.
And then there was this tendies. It was like chicken tenders, you know, like order gains. Get me a box of, like, buy this stock if you want some tendies. I don't know. It was like that's what it was about, wasn't it?
That's exactly what it was. Chicken tenders. I never really got it either, but. But yeah, he was very convincing. You know, he showed a lot of actual proof of his own gains for investing in different stocks. And why would I not believe this guy?
He was making gains at that period.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say. Like he was investing in companies and he was making money. So he was able to show that to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then that led you into his paid for communities, is that correct?
Yeah, so he advertised the course. So I've always been interested in psychology, and his course was called Stocks and Psychology of Money. And I thought, well, you know, the best investment is yourself. I certainly realised that, and it was like just under 500 quid, I think I paid for his course. And not only did it give you access to all of the content, but it also gave you access to his community. And there was like a little some bait around, I'll show you the trades that I don't show people on the
VIP trades.
They like signals when I buy and sell.
You'll be privy to the other crap that I buy that'll go to zero.
Yeah.
So I joined the Stocks and Psychology of Money course. And I have to say, some of the content, again, is actually really well done, really well thought through. The messaging is good. It's, you know, I did learn a few things. It's like, I don't want to completely hate on this guy. I did learn a few things. I like the way that the course was paced as well. I had plenty of time at home doing nothing because we were in the middle of a global pandemic. And I started to connect with the people in the community as well. And back to your earlier question, I think that was a value for me, really, actually, was connecting with the people in his community, because I was alone during a global pandemic that nobody knew when it was going to end or when we were going to be allowed out of our houses. And I think in everything that I've been through in the weeks leading up to that, I think that you very much find safety and solace in a herd, don't you? And I know that's the way that a certain part of our brain works, is that safety is within the herd.
We're tribal in a sense.
We're tribal, yeah, exactly. So to talk to other people, although not people that I would ever meet, like internet friends, about my experiences and, oh shit, yeah, I lost a load of money. And those are also conversations that I didn't feel confident enough to have with my actual friends or family. Yeah. Who wants to phone their mum and go, Mum, I'm an idiot. I lost 40 grand yesterday. You know, it's just not really, it's certainly not me. So I found it very comforting to be a member of his community. And then as we all started to invest in the same sort of portfolio and stock picks that he was recommending, of course, it was like party time for a while, because we're all like messaging each other going, wow, this is amazing. It's brilliant. Yeah. Stocks can only go up. Woo. And we celebrated together. So yeah, I think it was actually in the first few couple of weeks that I joined that community and started the course and started following his advice on what stocks to buy to try and claw some of my paper losses back, were actually great.
One of the hardest things about reading the brief around this and listening to your story beforehand was this kind of acknowledgement that the community element is what people seek out. Because I have this view of how I do my content that I've formed over a while. It's like, give all the information away for free, let people consume it, that's enough. And in reality, it's not. Because in those moments when things go wrong, people don't care about me on the other side of a screen. They want to talk to real people, be that me or be it a community. And by not having community, you're driven to people who do. And often that can be nefarious, or it can be, you know, the advice you receive in those echo chambers aren't very good. So it's kind of a wake-up call to me of like, I discredit that sometimes. I'm like, oh, you don't need that. You just give everyone the information for free. But then obviously people do need it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? I have to say that having, and all through my journey, even to the present day, being part of different groups online and different like Telegram channels that are about investing in other people that I've met through online communities is probably what's helped me the most through my entire journey.
Yeah.
And half of them I've never even met.
Communities have like lots of uses because it's like you said, it's like therapy almost, because you're other people who are in the same position as you can talk to them and be like, I lost this much. They're like, oh, I lost it too. But it also has like the benefit of when it's going well, you're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
So I've definitely been in a few communities myself. And I think, like Damien said, some of them are biased. So, but it can be good and it can be bad. So it's not always like, oh, it's a biased community, so therefore it's detrimental or it's a scam. So for example, crypto, I had a lot of big investment, and like you, I was watching it go down. It went down 80%. And I was in a little community of crypto people, and they're like, look, this is terrible, guys, but just hold steady. In the long run, we'll be fine because of X, Y, Z. And then 3 years later, it's back up. But if I didn't have that community, I know for a fact I would have sold. I would have been like ashamed like everyone else. Oh, I lost all my money. It was so silly. But because I had the community to support me, even though they were all saying this is bad, but hold, diamond hands, don't sell. And then 3 years later, I'm now in profit. But if I didn't have that community, I would have been like, I lost 50% in one day. It went down 20%. I need my money recouped. So sometimes it can have benefits if they have like logic and sense behind it, but it's very powerful.
How many find the right community?
That's the thing. Yeah, it's very
There's
powerful.
A lot of communities that rode into the floor.
Exactly.
AMC and GameStop, and you know, there's so many of these echo chambers where people are like diamond hands,
and people just sort of like hero worship some people on the internet as well, like, you know, like Roaring Kitty or whatever he's called. Like, so many people didn't want to. What was the stock that he's all
GameStop.
about? It is GameStop, isn't it? So many people who just purely because they hero worship that guy will say, don't ever sell GameStop. And if you fall into that community accidentally, and all of those people, just because they love him so much, will be saying, don't sell that stock, you'd be getting really bad advice. So I think you've got to be very mindful as to the community that you choose.
I think echo chambers are a real issue on the internet. And I think we all exist in them, and we need to be really honest about when we get caught in them. One that we released an episode recently where we gave a platform to an individual who believed that people should be picking stocks, individual stocks. I in the main disagree with this, but I think it's important to air that opinion so that I can at least, otherwise I just sit here and say everyone should buy a global index, and it sounds convincing, but maybe it's not. You know, and I think with the crypto stuff, you've got a good example there.
I've got the opposite as well, though.
There's so many where people
Terra Luna,
and you almost get shamed if you stick. It's kind of like you know, Ponzi schemes like Cash FX, where you've got to keep bringing people in, and then people
otherwise you're excluded from the tribe.
It's a scam, and it's like delete them. You're ostracized from the tribe. So you found comfort in this group, and you got in there, and you said the quality of the information was good, and you were making money by buying individual companies. Is that right?
Yeah.
What happened?
So they were going up, most of them, I think. There were a lot. So as time goes by, although it's quite a short amount of time, of course you get a bit of confidence, don't you? Because this guy is saying buy these stocks. These stocks are going up. We're all celebrating. I'm partway back to making back some of my unrealised losses, and everyone's happy. But then as time went on, some of them started to go down, and then some of them stayed up and some of them went down, and then it was sort of all over the place, really, if I'm honest. And by that point, when I was a couple of months in, I had a lot. I had like over 30 different stocks that I purchased as part of his advice through the course and some of his other sort of like public videos as well. And I didn't really know what to do other than to not panic like I had last time. Ironically, I should have panicked this time. And just sit on them, really, and sort of wait and see what happened. And the good thing to come out of it is that was the point in my investing journey where I started to learn a bit more about how to read an earnings report and assign my own valuation to a stock and make my own decision as to whether I think it's a company that I want to own a part of or not. But, you know, the fruits of that labour only really came to fruition much later down the line. But at that time, I just remember looking at some of them. And of course, I had a Trading 212 app on my phone. I was literally on it every 5 minutes, like refresh. And some of them were going up, some of them were going down, but generally the trajectory was ultimately always going to go in one direction. Like I can't think of any of the stock picks that he recommended that ever medium to long term did well.
And was it him making the recommendations? I mean, I want to be careful because I know it's always badged up as like, this is not advice. Was it him talking about the individual companies or was it people within the community?
It was him talking about the individual companies, yeah. He very often did like sponsored videos on these companies. Should have been a red
companies
flag.
were sponsoring him to talk about the businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, that
big red flag.
Oh,
yeah, I know. Oh, God.
No,
but it happens a lot. Don't feel bad.
Stupid.
It happens all the time.
Stupid.
Like a lot of
Stupid.
people do it, and sometimes they're not as direct that they're being sponsored. But I mean, yeah, it happens a lot in the industry.
I heard Scott Galloway. Is it Scott Galloway? The guy, he's very convincing when he talks. He was talking about Reddit the other day and being like, this is a social media company that's worth 60 billion and all the others are worth $1 trillion. And why wouldn't you buy that? And I was just like, why wouldn't I buy that? Like, and I'm like, you know, the guy who, and I get suckered in. So, and when you're in the communities as well, and this guy is making money for you and has got all the receipts, don't feel like an idiot.
Yeah, it's hard. But it wasn't as if he seemed like he was just coming up with, you know, idiots.com, buy some of that. They were companies that I'd heard of. I thought his thesis was well thought out in terms of some of the content that he was making about these companies. And I could see why you would want, of course, I didn't really know how to value a company back then, but I could see why you would invest in those companies. But yeah, it didn't work out too great for me.
I feel like if you're incentivized, you can spin a story to make anything kind of look attractive. Not anything, but a lot of things you can make look attractive with like selective data or
conviction, selected data.
Really convicting and convincing people to like, this is the reason why you should buy this. And you say, oh, that makes sense. But then you don't have someone on the other side say, okay, these are the reasons why that could not be true. So it's kind of hard to always know. When they make a compelling argument, you tend to, as humans, if someone makes a compelling argument, you tend to listen to them. You're like, oh, that makes sense. I don't see any flaws with that. And then
every good investor will say, these are the risks in the investment. So if they're not doing proper analysis, if they don't go, these are the reasons I like it, but these are the threats, and how credible are those threats? And I think a lot of stock pickers online only talk about the positives, and you can polish any turd in that way.
Yeah.
You acknowledge that even when you saw negatives, you wouldn't take them on. You were kind of like screening out.
Bias.
Yeah. So
yeah, I was terrible for it, and it's something that I'm really aware of today, and I'm mindful of that in any arena in life. So if he would say invest in demo.com, I would
great business.
I would first of all go and do a little bit of what I would call my own due diligence, which would generally involve me putting the name of the company into Twitter.
It's real. See what people say. Okay.
Yeah. And so, or the ticker symbol, you know, so I could get a more sort of like the investment sort of point of view. And I would scroll through, I don't know how many tweets that said, this is a shit stock, don't buy this, bag of shit, crap stock, don't do it, to find the one that would say, oh yeah, this will make you a millionaire. And that's the one that I would believe, because in my mind, all of these other people that were saying that it was terrible didn't know what they were talking about.
I get that the other way around, but with YouTube comments. So there'll be like 1,000 comments being like, you're amazing, you changed my life. And there'll be one guy that'll be like, shut up, you melt. And I'll be like, oh, I have a melt. He's right.
That's me as well.
Biggest dick is 942.
Look at what you said about me. And there was like, look, there's like 100 good comments. I'm like, but this person said this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
but I think it's really good to be mindful of that, because in life now, if there's something, even if there's like an opinion that I hold, I will actively seek out an opposing opinion by some loser on the internet. Just to try and balance up my own, you know, is okay. I might not think that his opinion is right, but it just, I don't know, it humbles you a little bit more.
It's hard to do
in
that
your own opinion.
In an algorithm-driven world that serves you information that suits your narratives, because you start as like, moderately left, moderately right, and within a month you were extreme ends, looking at like the hard ends of each political spectrum, because the algorithm just drives you to the clicks, doesn't it? And I think it's the same. It's not easy to seek out opinions that differ to your own. You know, I might have a view of the world and I go, how do I even find the alternative view? Because I'm locked into my echo chambers.
Yeah.
There's a problem that a lot of business owners face. I was one of them until recently. What do you do with the money that's sitting in your company? That excess money that you don't need to use to operate, but you don't want to rip it all out and just get taxed into oblivion. If it just sits there, inflation destroys the real value of it. But a lot of small companies, including sole traders, don't do anything with the cash in their business accounts. This is why I'm happy that we're partnering with Tide. They offer an instant access saver account where new customers can get 4.07% AER variable on unlimited deposits until at least the 31st of March 2025. I use a Tide account, and I even store the money that I need for my VAT in there just to generate a bit of interest while I'm waiting to pay the bill. If you're interested in putting your money in the business to work, head to tide.co/savings. There's a link in the description for you. For full offer T's and C's and Tide's terms, visit tide.co/terms. Variable rates are correct as of the 7th of November 2024.
There was a number of companies. I remember at the time, because I remember, for example, Financial Education, who's Jeremy, what's his face? He's another one. Yeah, I don't know if you know who he is. Jeremy Lefeu or something. He's one of Kevin's friends, and he was pumping a lot of stocks at the time. And the secret with these people is they make much more money out of selling the spades than they do from mining the gold, right? The pickaxes. One of the big stocks was Tattooed Chef. I remember. Was that one of the companies? Yeah. I think the thing is with that though, compelling narrative of like, at the time, veganism was rising quite aggressively. EV stocks are comparable. It seemed that there was a palpable shift in the way people were approaching these topics. And then these companies seem well positioned to take hold of the revolution,
Absolutely.
Right?
That's what I mean. There was a lot of sense that they spoke in the stock picks that they recommended. And that's a really good example. Like another one was like an EV charging company. Like, EV companies selling more electric vehicles than ever before. Of course, it makes sense to invest in the charging infrastructure. And this guy is telling me what company to do it in. It was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
They went bust.
We saw some of the returns that you sent over, and I think out of the 8 businesses, 4 are bust and the others were down about 80-90%.
Yeah.
Are there any that made money over the time period that you can recall?
I think there's one that's doing okay now, but I sold out when I finally decided that I'd been an idiot and that I should probably do something about it. There's one called Affirm. They're like a buy now, pay later.
Yeah, I remember that.
But I mean, I remember buying them at like $100 and I think they went down to 20.
Yeah, they took a massive dip initially and then recovered. But again, it's that point of, if you don't know why you're buying a business and you're just buying it because someone else says so, you don't know when to sell. You don't know what's going on.
And that was the problem. Like a lot of his recommendations did well in the short term. The issue with his model is that he never told anybody when he sold. And that's what I have an issue with. And that's what the community and the friends that I made in the community had an issue with, is that you might find out just by something that he says in a video 6 months later that he sold a stock and we're all left holding the baby and we're down 90%,
I highly suspect that he sold it as soon as he told everyone to buy it.
Yeah.
But if he was getting sponsored.
A lot of influencers
it feels very...
Yeah.
There's a lot of conflict of interest there if you're telling people to buy a stock and they're sponsoring you.
And he produces so much content as well. It's so diluted.
5 videos a day.
Yeah. And some of them are like 3 hours long. So,
and he might mention in one video on a random Tuesday at 2.
Yeah.
Like
by the way,
I sold that. And then he can draw back to that and go, I did tell everyone. And it's like, well, unless you're watching Meet Kevin 24/7, you wouldn't know.
How did the community feel? Like, you're still in the community, right?
I am actually, yeah.
How do they feel about it?
I met some really great people. And I think that was one of the turning points in my mind, was some of the things that happened in the community. Everyone was a bit pissed off because everybody had been buying all these stocks that have all of a sudden down like 70, 80, 90%. And talking to different people about their different experiences and the different backgrounds that they come from and the money that they invested and where they got that money from, was actually really alarming to me, because I consider myself incredibly lucky to have a well-paid job where I've got some spare cash that I can put into some stocks that might go to zero. I can afford to lose it. It's fine. But I met some people, particularly another couple of females, because I think the whole industry is probably sort of overweighted men to women by probably like 10 to 1. A couple of women who, like, I met a woman who skipped her rent one month so that she could put the money into some of his stocks and buy his course. And she had 2 young children. She worked in hospitality in the US, so she lost her job through COVID. And it was like, you're literally talking about people's life savings. Yeah. But whether that's £100,000 or £100, it's all relative, isn't it? And so I was coming across these people I never told them how much money I invested, because I just felt awful, because they were investing like $100 and on their backsides because they'd lost most of it. And so it was that sort of made me, and a couple of other sort of videos that he made that annoyed me a little bit. But it was that really made me think, I can't do this anymore. I've got to get out of all this and figure it out myself and get some proper advice and try and make good.
Was it hard to make that admission to yourself?
So hard.
It feels real then, right?
Yeah. And also, like, you want to be right. Again, reading about the psychology associated with investing and trading as well. It's our ego that doesn't want to sell a stock, because selling the stock at a loss is an admission that you were wrong to buy it in the first place. And you have to get your ego to a place where you can deal with that, and that you can put your hand up and admit to it's so much harder to admit to myself that I've been an idiot than actually I find it to admit to other people, if I'm totally honest. But naturally, I'm quite a perfectionist, and I think because of what we went through in COVID and the time that we were living through, I wanted to provide for myself. You know, I lived alone. I'd gone through a divorce a couple of years beforehand, and I wanted to be the best person for me and provide for myself and invest in the right stocks and look towards retiring early, and all the way back to the beach when I was 23 reading that book, thinking like, yeah, I'm going to be a millionaire, woo, to, you know, that present day and thinking, Amy, you couldn't have made a bigger cock up of this. Like, what are you going to do? When
I was in my early 20s, I was in a relationship, and the individual that I was in a relationship with told me that she was going to inherit millions of pounds. And she said, I'm going to be a multi-millionaire and I need someone to help me manage it. So do you want to do that with me? And I was like, fucking, this is sick. You know, early 20s, met this person. She's going to be rich. I can quit my job. So I quit my job. There was no money. It was just a lie. And I sat on my ass for a year, not admitting to myself that it was a lie, even though I knew it was, waiting for this money. And in that time, I built up all this debt. I didn't pay anything. And I remember the day that I spoke to my uncle, actually, and he was like, there is no money. Like, you need to get out of this situation. And that was like the hardest day, because as long as the liars keeps going, you don't have to admit to yourself that you've been an idiot. And you would rather just keep the lie going than go. It's almost like you've been born afterwards, or like the air was like cleared out the room, and it's like, oh, now I'm in the cold, dark world on my own. So, you know, I went through something similar in that sense.
I'm lucky, you know.
Yeah, that's it. It led me here. It led me here. So honestly, everything that I am right now is because of that moment. And this is why when I said to you before, it's the making of you. You're kind of forged in that fire. And I think everyone has to go through it. And I know it's an awful, traumatic experience to lose money, not once, but twice. You know, you feel like a fool every way round, right?
Yeah.
You'll find that like the wisdom that you gain from it in years to come will make you infinitely more money. And I think to make those mistakes in earlier life rather than at 60. You see people that make that mistake as they're about to retire. They transfer their retirement to a scammer on a phone because they've never been unlucky enough but fortunate enough to take the knock in their early portion of their life. Do you know what I mean? So I think you'll see it as a blessing long term.
I do now. Overall, I'm really grateful for the experience that I went through because of all the reasons that you just highlighted. It has made me a better investor. And it's made other areas of my life improve because of the lessons that I've learned around who I am and how I behave and why I behave that way. To be mindful of that is I think, really puts you in a position of strength.
This is a hard question, but who do you blame? Do you blame Kevin? Do you blame yourself?
No, I blame myself. Don't get me wrong, like some of the ways in which he conducts himself is not great. I'm not advocating what he does or the message that he delivers, although I notice he has diversified slightly recently.
He's a bit of a chameleon, isn't he? He sheds his skin. He was a property guy and then he was a stock guy, and now he's
into options.
Yeah, and now he's a property guy again, and a bit like a politician. And,
But one of the, I'm a great lover of like a saying, and one of the sayings that I read in one of the books that I read is that holding resentment is like drinking poison and expecting your enemy to die. And that rung so true with me, like resonated with me so hard. And I probably did hate on him for a bit, and I probably did make a horrible comment on one of his videos at some point in 2020, but I'm way past that now. Like, I wish him all the best. I hope he doesn't like help people lose any more money. But for me, on my journey, to sit here and just blame him for what was ultimately my own decision, and I'm a big girl, would be, isn't conducive to living a happy, healthy life. And so I don't hold any resentment towards him. And again, that's a good lesson for, all of my life's experiences, whether it be the scammer on the telly that's telling you what stocks to buy, or whether it be the idiot that cut me up at the roundabout this morning. I think...
T, you see him on the way.
I was late to hear it.
So I 100% blame myself.
After that, and after like the day you kind of admitted to yourself that it wasn't right and you left, what happened from there?
So for a while, I did nothing. I just the admission that something had to change was enough for me to start re-educating myself a little bit, looking into some other stuff. I think that was probably about the same sort of time that I came across you online. And just really getting an idea of my financial situation overall, and starting to try and work out a plan as to how I wanted to get to, an early retirement or paying off my mortgage or whatever it was that I was focused on at the time. And so I read books. I tried to find some new online communities of people that I thought weren't scammers, made some new internet friends, read some more books. I paid for some online education as well. I went any free course that you could get from any, like HL have some great online education resources. I did all that, sat around teaching myself about, just economics in general, and did some investigation into like previous crashes and, why they happen, when they happen, just anything really. I actually became really interested and wanted to start my future investment journey from a better foundation. And so I recognised that I needed to invest in myself and learn things from more impartial sources, as opposed to people that had a ulterior motive.
You're still engaging in education in a paid format, you said there. How do you say that the person needs to be more impartial? How did you make that judgment?
It's hard because, of course, anyone could say anything. I think recommendation from friends and other people in the community is always a good thing. And I think that now, after everything that I've been through, I think that probably I am a better judge of character, because I've now have experienced the red flags and ignored them previously, whereas now they are so red flaggy to me. And I think that probably just by nature of what I've been through, I've got a better idea of what is good.
When you're looking for an influencer, if you're not paying, if you're just looking for someone on YouTube like Damo, how do you, apart from getting recommendations, how would you advise people to look for how do you look for a good influencer?
I think it has to be somebody that resonates with you. I think that I look for people, this is going to sound so awful, but I look for people that are a bit more boring. Sorry.
That's all right.
It's all right, buddy. That's why you don't watch
What I mean by that is that people that aren't driving around in Lamborghinis with boxes of Rolexes and a wad of £50 notes on the passenger
I prefer
seat.
Pateks and Bentleys.
He only uses £20 notes.
Wipe my ass.
$100 bills for everything else.
And so, sorry, boring's probably not the right word, but you
flashy.
know what I mean.
Less flashy.
Yeah, because like I would say that those flashy people are never really actually
Wealth whispers, right? And the people who have to sit there and be like, look at my Lamborghini, like what?
But they're the ones that get the millions of followers.
They are because people. There's always someone that falls for that initially because it's almost like validation.
Yeah.
Whereas in reality, it's the person sat there in a t-shirt that's just like, this is the thing to do that you should probably listen to.
So I love all the like investment of some of the stuff that I've actually paid for previously. So a lot of the best stuff that I've actually encountered has been free, you know, because I found that gem of that channel or that person or that blog or that book. I just inhale books now. I love reading. I'm normally reading one and listening to an audio book at the same time.
You do both at the same time?
No, sure.
Not literally at the same time, but I mean, I might be reading a book one minute and then in the car listening to another book when I'm in the car. And like, so like Roman at Pension Craft, I love his channel and the information that he's given me through there for free has actually saved me long-term, probably so much money, just purely because it made me investigate my default pension fund and the fees that are associated with that and change it. Yeah. Like the money that I will save over a term just by doing that is, you know, amazing. And that was free. You know, he provides an amazing service. I love him.
Yeah, he is amazing.
But he sat in a room in his house.
Yeah.
In a t-shirt, white wall, you know.
Yeah, he did up his studio and he just stuck a picture of the dog to the wall, didn't he?
Oh, so cute. Yeah. But a lot of people will watch that and they'll go, well, this is boring.
Yeah. What does he know? Where's his Lambo and private jet?
Exactly.
I get adverts from a guy who's always in a pool. Damo says, stop paying for YouTube. Pay so you don't have YouTube adverts. But the guy's always like, I'm a trader. And I'm like, you're in a pool. How are you a trader? And he's always like flashing off his cars in his pool and his holidays. And I'm like, I will never watch your content because it's very...
So the YouTube premium subscription is worth it just to not see that guy.
Yeah, value your time, people. I mean, like, you know, add up how much time you spend watching ads. I get angry when I go to someone's house and there's ads. I'm like, what is this fucking ad on here?
Shouting at me at 11 p.m.
I bought my ass with £20 notes. You got me out here watching this guy, Greg Secker, talking shit.
How do you know that's what I was talking about?
Greg Secker is.
That's the guy.
He's definitely going to sue us. he's like, oh, do you see my gardener over there? I'm just in the den and my gardener's out there. I'm going to teach him how to trade.
Literally.
Yeah. If you got the answers on how to trade, you don't teach people. You just sit in a dark room and you trade. Yeah. Because, you know, if you've got a money printing machine, you don't let anyone else use it. And I think that's the thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's so obvious to me now, the people that are producing content, because it comes from a very pure place in that they genuinely want people to learn and passively invest and do it properly and have better lives for their families and moving forwards. And I think that it's so obvious to me now who those people are.
So where are you at now with your investing? Have you got the money back?
So I've obviously had to make a lot of changes.
Yeah.
And the process that I had to go through, because I know I've got to know myself really well throughout this process, right? And I just knew that even though most of those stocks were like down 90% or whatever, I couldn't just go sell. I just didn't have it in me just to do that. And there was still a tiny fragment of me that was like, they might just go up tomorrow, just leave it till tomorrow, one more day. So what I did is I sat down after re-educating myself a little bit. I sat down and I did I'm good at spreadsheets. So I put together a spreadsheet and I plotted all the numbers in, and with the help of ChatGPT and a compound interest calculator, I took all of the money that were on paper were going to be realised losses and what would be left from each of those individual investments. And I rattled them into the compound interest calculator. And so argument's sake, if something I bought 100 quid's worth of was now worth a tenner, let's say, I put that tenner into my interest calculator and figured out what that might look like in 20 years after putting it into a global index fund. And then I added the next tenner and the next 15 quid. And so I realigned, you know, all of my finances the previous invested stocks that way. And that then gave me, because I could see it and it felt a bit more tangible in terms of what it could become. It helped me to be able to one by one just slowly pull the Band-Aid off, and sold one day, and then a couple of days later, feeling brave today, let's sell another one, and gradually cycled that money over. And then obviously I'm back to putting money every month into a couple of different indexes. Very luckily, I did do some of my own stock picking at the time, just because of other pure more luck than judgment, and the fact that I work in the tech industry, so I know that long-term Microsoft probably aren't going to go bust, for instance. And so I bought some mega caps and bought some Microsoft, some Apple, Alphabet, Meta, some Coca-Cola, read Warren Buffett's book, and dividends. I think probably there's something in that. So bought a couple of dividend stocks as well. And of course, they're doing incredibly well.
You outperformed the experts, the guys who, yeah. Because no one wants to hear that you like these boring companies that have done well forever will probably keep doing well. They want to hear that, oat milk and vegan ready meals are like the future.
EV charging.
Yeah, because if Meet Kevin's video was, I got the next hot stock, it's Coca-Cola, people would be like, oh.
Yeah, it's bad though, isn't it? Yeah. Because why is it not that way?
Yeah.
Why can he not? But you're right. Yeah. Even if he did think that and he invested in Coca-Cola, he would never do a video on Coca-Cola. No.
People think it's boring. They want new, shiny, and
and we're the AI bubble at the moment as well. One of the stocks that I actually invested in that Meet Kevin talked a lot about was called C3 AI. So AI in the name. Yeah, that's down like 95% or something.
Yeah.
So it's not just like if people, I think at the moment, I talk to people again in communities, and I honestly think that they think that any AI investment will do well long term. It's not the case.
You need to review the dot-com bubble and what happened there.
Exactly. And you might be an AI company, but you might be laden in billions of pounds worth of debt. Well, nobody is going to survive that, are they?
So how much money do you think you lost in the end?
I think probably if I'd have sold at the lowest point of all of those different stock picks, those like 30 odd stocks that I was invested in, I would have lost half of my money. So I would have been down, nearly £20,000 from my initial investment that I put in. And I was putting in additional money as well. It was in the middle of COVID. We had nothing to spend money on, did we? And when the stocks first started going up, I was like, come on, let's get more in, more. Because money makes money. So I was pretty stupid, and I put in loads of extra money as well, not just that initial money that I sold from the Fidelity fund. I was putting in some extra money as well, and so 50% of it was gone.
You've become quite passionate now about sort of exposing online things, and I mean, you're sat here telling this story, which I know is painful to talk about. Why has that happened? And
I just going back to my little story about one of the other members of the Meet Kevin community that sort of skipped her rent to buy his course and then put in her last $100 and lost it all. I honestly can't bear to see people lose money. I really find I struggle to deal with it. I find it so heartbreaking, especially when it's people that don't have the money to lose. Which obviously you could say that you need to be aware of your own finances, and if you haven't got the money to invest, then you probably shouldn't be investing. But I still think that whether it be £1 a week or £100 a week, everybody should be able to try and get some money into, some sort of ISA or SIP or invest somehow. And we do live in a world where there's so much scamming online. There's so many idiots in Lamborghinis with Rolexes in swimming pools on holiday in Mykonos every 5 minutes who are selling that dream lifestyle to people, and people are falling for it. And it really does keep me awake at night to think that all of these people out there are doing all of these, social media influencers, as you call them, I think it's terrible. And to me, I find it so easy to identify them now. And if I can help somebody make a better decision as to what to do with their money, then I will walk over hot coals to do that. Whether that means exposing someone online and putting the word out in a community that I might be a member of to say, don't buy this person's course, or don't pay them £20 a week to get their signals for their investments, or whatever it might be. Or whether it's just trying to encourage conversation about it in my own communities and different online communities, then I'll do anything to try and make people make a better decision.
And what are the biggest learnings that you've taken away from the experiences and personally?
I think to be more self-aware, I think is number one. All of the things that I've learned about myself and the psychology of the decisions that I made and how I behaved previously, although heightened because we were, enduring the pandemic, I think that it's really important to understand who I am, why I am, and why I make certain decisions, and to lean into that and help myself behave in a better way. And not necessarily just go, no, Amy, you're never allowed to stock pick again. You just have to cycle into a global index fund. That's the end of your fun. And an example of that would be that I got this idea from Romin, actually. I've got like a little slush fund so that I leave my portfolio alone and don't mess around with it and think, oh, that's gone up a bit. Perhaps I'll just sell it today and hope it goes down tomorrow and then buy some more. I've got my little slush fund that I don't care if I lose it, and that I can mess around with that and buy stocks that might be shit and might go to zero and not care too much about it, or whatever the latest meme coin is, or I wouldn't do that. But I've got this fund. Yeah. That's
I would before, not now.
But I've got this fund that I'm happy to just have a bit of a fun with, really. And
protects the portfolio. Kind of keeps the idle hands busy,
yeah, exactly.
I do the same, about 10%, just to scratch that itch, that very human itch.
I have it, and I've got to be mindful that I have that, and why tie my hands behind my back and allow myself no fun. I think it's a really good thing to do if you can afford it, just to have a cup. And actually, I do all right with it. So because I care less about it as well, which is another maybe another conversation for another day. But being less attached to that money and not wanting to hold on to it tightly and actually not caring if I lose a couple of quid, then is actually long term. I think I've probably done better because of the way that I face that.
Just, a lot of our experienced investor guests have echoed that sentiment of like a money pit, or like 10%, 5% for just speculation and stocks. So you've definitely learned a lot. You're doing well, because these big dogs are all saying that's a good idea.
I think you're much wiser than a lot of the big dogs. The amount of big dogs that sit there going, I know what's about to happen. Be like, how long have you been right for? They're like, I've been wrong for decades. Literally, the game on guest this morning was just like, yeah, I'm always wrong. Okay, so there's so much pain and trauma. I've experienced this, and, regret and hating yourself that comes along with making these mistakes. There's going to be a lot of people that have made them. So if you could say anything to them, or if you could go back to yourself at the point where you felt shit, what would you say to yourself?
I would say talk to somebody. I found that I was convinced that the decisions that I was making were the right decisions for me. And I did that without talking to anybody, really. I made the decisions entirely through my own traumatized emotions, and then, fear, greed, panic. And then I think that the decisions that I made would have been different if I'd have spoken to somebody about it. Now, I don't think that that's going to be easy for everybody, because it's certainly in my circumstance, in my circle of friends and my family, there weren't really very many people that were interested in investing. I didn't have anybody too close to me. But had I have just, made friends with people via an online community, or, tried to reach out to somebody, financial advisor would have been good, right? Back then, I think I would have made very different decisions. And I don't think I would have got into quite the amount of trouble that I did. But as I say, hindsight's a wonderful thing. I'm actually really glad it all happened as well, because now I've come out the other side a much better investor. So it's tricky. But I definitely think a problem shared is a problem halved, right? And even if the advice that you're given by that person is terrible, then at least reaffirms the decision that you've made. They might have said to me, oh yeah, you should definitely sell. Well, great. Confirmation bias, brilliant. That's what I needed. But they also might give you some really good advice, or they might have experienced something themselves.
Well, I just want to say thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
You're
Thanks
amazing.
for having me.
Well, I thought you were amazing until you called me boring.
That's when I thought you were amazing. When
Didn't mean boring. You know what I meant.
Yeah, you meant smart. But no, thank you, honestly. I think people who listen and really resonate, and I think there's not many people that would sit here on a platform. You know, you're not part of this world and offer up their story so candidly. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Amy, so much for coming on. I really love that episode. She's so brave for having a chat to us. If you feel that you've been affected by anything we discussed today, or you just want to have a chat to us, you can email us at makingmoney@getmost.co.uk.
And if you want to learn more about the psychology of money, check out this episode with psychologist Vicky Raynor. Spectacular.